Her scream made no sound, yet the desert heard it. The sun hammered the barren plain, turning the sand to glass beneath its fire. A young woman staggered through the heat, her bare feet torn and bleeding, her breath shallow and uneven. The only thing shielding her trembling body was a palm frond she had ripped from the earth miles back. Near an old windmill, dust streaked her tears. The scent of blood tangled with sweat and terror. Each step looked ready to be her last. By the time she reached the boundary of Cole Barrett's ranch, the world had already faded to white. Her name was Nora Pike, though Cole wouldn't learn that until sunrise. No one in those lands had ever seen a girl run that far and live. She pressed herself against the rough timber wall of his cabin, shaking so violently the boards creaked beneath her. When the door swung open, she froze. Cole stood there, a rope slung over one shoulder, his hat shadowing a weather-worn face. His eyes, cold as gunmetal, locked on hers. He had seen dying men, broken horses, even Apache raids, but never anything like this. For a long moment, silence ruled. The wind filled the gap, hot and dry as breath from a forge. Then her lips moved, cracked and trembling. "Please," she whispered, "don't send me back." Cole stepped forward, slow enough not to startle, firm enough to show intent. He shrugged off his old canvas coat and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. Beneath it, he could feel the sharp edges of hunger and the bruises no man should ever leave on a woman. He led her inside. She flinched at every sound. The hiss of the kettle, the creak of the boards, the scrape of his boots. When he reached for a clean rag and a bowl of water, tears welled in her eyes. "What happened to you?" he asked quietly. She shook her head at first. Then the words spilled out, rough and jagged, like stones through ice. "My father sneaks in every night." Her voice cracked like thunder before a storm, raw and shattered. She paused, eyes fixed on the floor. "He ain't my real father," she whispered, choking on the truth. Cole went still. The words hung heavy in the air, wrong enough to silence even the desert. Then she began to cry, not loud, but deep, like something breaking inside. Cole knelt beside her. He didn't speak, didn't ask again. He only wrapped the bandages around her wrists until her shaking began to ease. Outside, a hawk screamed across the canyon, its cry slicing through the still heat. In that sound, something fierce woke inside him, not fear, not pity, fury. He looked toward the door, then back at her. "You're safe here," he said softly. "But in a place like Arizona territory, safety don't last long." And as he poured water into the basin, one question burned in his mind. When that monster comes for her, how far will I go to stop him? The next morning rose hot and blinding, the kind of Arizona heat that made the air waver like liquid over the dirt. Cole was up before the sun had climbed high, feeding his horses, trying to act like life hadn't changed overnight. But it had. Inside the cabin, a broken girl slept in his bed, wrapped in one of his old wool blankets. Her words still echoed in his mind, raw and unshakable. "My father sneaks in every night." They rang in his head like a bullet he couldn't dig out. He didn't notice the dust cloud at first, not until his dog, Jasper, started barking toward the gate. Cole shaded his eyes. A lone rider tore across the plain, kicking up dirt like the devil himself was driving him. By the time the horse pulled up, Cole already knew who it was, an Ephraim Pike. A man whose eyes were always half drunk, half mean, his face red from sun and whiskey both. "Where is she?" he barked before his boots hit the ground. "You got my girl in there, don't you?" Cole didn't move. He stood by the corral fence, arms folded, jaw hard. "She's not yours," he said flatly. "And she's not leaving with you." Ephraim laughed, harsh, ugly. "You think I won't come in and take her?" Cole's hand dropped to the grip of his Colt, not to draw, just to remind him what side of the barrel the law stood on. "You take one more step," he said evenly, "and you'll crawl home." Ephraim tried it anyway. He shoved at the gate. Cole caught his wrist faster than a striking snake. Years of breaking wild horses had made his hands like iron. In one motion, he twisted hard and slammed the man face first into the dirt. Ephraim spat grit, cursing. "This ain't over." "Old man," he growled. "You'll wish you never touched what's mine." Cole stared down at him. calm and cold. She was never yours, he said. You married her mama, not her. Ephraim climbed back on his horse, glaring daggers, and rode off toward the hills. Jasper barked until the man vanished into the shimmering heat. Inside the cabin, Nora stood at the window, fingers clutching the blanket tight around her shoulders. He's coming back, isn't he? She whispered. Cole didn't answer right away. He poured her a tin cup of water, handed it over, and said quietly, "Let him try." She watched him for a long time, searching his face for the truth behind those words. Cole turned toward the open door, the desert wind rushing in with the smell of dust and sage. He knew Ephraim wasn't finished. Men like him never quit, not until someone stops them for good. And deep down, Cole knew one more thing. Next time, Ephraim wouldn't come alone. Trouble was already riding closer than the wind. And the desert never closed its eyes. The desert always kept its secrets. That evening, the sun sank behind the Hua Mountains, spilling gold light over the range. The air softened, but Cole's gut stayed hard. Trouble wasn't through. He could feel it. Out here. Quiet nights had a way of meaning someone was creeping close. Nora helped him bring in the horses. Her hands still trembling a little, she tried to act steady, but fear showed in the way her eyes flicked toward the road. Cole noticed but said nothing, working slow and calm, letting her find his rhythm. By dawn, his instincts proved right. Fresh hoofprints cut through the sand behind the barn. 2 sets this time. One belonged to Ephraim. The other, heavier, came from a man who rode like he'd done it all his life. By noon, they showed up at the gate. Ephraim was yelling before he was close, waving a pistol like a drunk preacher. The man beside him stayed quiet, half hidden beneath a black hat. Cole recognized that slouch, that still, watchful way of seeing everything. Jeb Crowley. Once a shotgun guard for the stage line out of Charleston. Cole stepped out slow, wiping his hands on a rag. "Morning, boys," he said evenly. "You sure you want to be here?" Ephraim spat in the dust. "You got something of mine." Before Cole could answer, Jeb's eyes found his and froze. He'd seen that face before, years back outside Tombstone. The night Cole Barrett saved the marshal by dropping 3 rustlers in under 10 seconds. Word was, Cole never missed. Jeb had carried that memory like a wound that never healed. The sound of that Winchester, the look in Cole's eyes after the smoke cleared. Now, standing here, Jeb's hands went slack on the reins. "No, Ephraim," he muttered. "Not this man." "Not today," Ephraim snarled. "What's wrong with you?" Jeb's gaze never left Cole. "I like breathing. That's what." Then he turned his horse and rode off without another word. Ephraim was left alone, red-faced, furious, cursing into the wind. Cole didn't move. He just nodded toward the hills. "You best ride before the sheriff hears how close you came to dying." Ephraim spat one last curse and kicked his horse, vanishing into his own dust. When the noise faded, Nora stepped out from behind the barn. "That man," she whispered. "He looked scared of you," Cole shrugged. "Some folks remember what they should." Then he turned toward the cabin, already thinking ahead. Men like Ephraim never stop. Not until someone stops them first. That night, Cole sat on the porch, coffee cooling in his hands. He knew what came next. Tomorrow, he'd ride to Tombstone and speak to the sheriff, an old friend. It was time to end this the right way. So before you go anywhere, take a breath. Pour yourself a cup of tea. Let this story settle deep. Then tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? And if you've been riding this trail with me so far, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens when Cole rides into Tombstone tomorrow. The next morning, the desert air was sharp and dry. Cole saddled his old bay, tied a clean shirt to the back, and told Nora he'd be gone before the heat rose. She followed him to the gate, pale, but stronger than he'd ever seen her. "You sure you need to go?" she asked. He nodded. "It's time the law heard your story." The ride to Tombstone took most of the day. The sun baked the road, and heat shimmered off the sand like waves of water. Cole knew every bend in that trail, every dry wash, every hollow where outlaws once hid. By sunset, the town appeared ahead, a scatter of wooden roofs and hammer blows echoing from a half-built saloon near the sheriff's office. The air smelled of gun oil and burnt coffee. Reheated one time too many. Sheriff Tom Grady looked up from his desk and grinned. Well, if it isn't Cole Barrett. Thought you'd gone quiet out there on that ranch. Cole gave a faint smile. Didn't come for small talk. Tom, I've got a story you need to hear. A girl's story. He told him everything. How Nora showed up half dead, half dressed, covered in bruises and fear. How she'd whispered about the man who called himself her father. The sheriff listened, jaw tightening with every word. When Cole finished, Tom rose from his chair. You did right bringing her here. I'll send for Doc Harris to take her statement. Then we'll get a warrant. By nightfall, the doctor confirmed it all. Tom rode out with 2 deputies toward Benson to arrest Ephraim Pike. Cole stayed behind, pacing outside the office, watching the stars slide across the rooftops. Near midnight, the writers returned. Tom's face told the story before his words did. He wasn't home, he said grimly. Neighbor claims he left before sundown. Said he had business near your land. Cole's stomach dropped cold. He didn't wait for more. He grabbed his hat and rifle. Cole, Tom warned, don't go off half-cocked. We'll send men at dawn. Cole looked back once. Morning might be too late. He rode hard into the night. The moon hung full and white, bright enough to light the dust trail behind him. Every mile closer to the ranch weighed heavier. He could see Nora in his mind, alone in that small cabin, maybe asleep, maybe wide-eyed in the dark. Then, as dawn broke over the hills, he saw smoke, a dark plume rising from the direction of his barn. His heart clenched. He spurred his horse faster. Rifle ready, the gate was open. The air reeked of ash and gunpowder. Then, a scream, the kind a man never forgets. Cole was off the horse before it stopped moving. Smoke rolled low across the yard. The barn door was split wide. Inside, shadows moved through the haze. Ephraim Pike, wild-eyed, desperate, stood there with a pistol shaking in his hand. Nora was cornered, clutching a lantern like a weapon of last hope. Cole stepped in slow. Rifle steady. Put it down, he said. Ephraim laughed, dry, cracked ugly. You think you can take what's mine and walk away? Cole didn't answer. His eyes flicked to Nora, then back to the man who'd ruined her life. She was never yours, he said softly, and she never will be. The moment stretched tight, the air humming with heat and dust. Then, one shot. Ephraim dropped, clutching his leg. Outside, boots thundered. Tom and his men burst in, rifles raised. We heard the shot from the ridge, Tom said, voice low and sharp. Cole lowered his rifle, chest heaving. You got here just in time, Tom nodded. He'll live long enough to stand trial. Justice rides slow out here, but when it comes, it doesn't forget. Days later, the courtroom in Tombstone was full. Ephraim Pike stood pale under bruises and light. The doctor's report, Cole's testimony, and Nora's trembling words told the truth plain. The judge's gavel hit hard. Years of labor in the territorial prison. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. When they stepped into the sunlight, Nora reached for Cole's hand. Her eyes were still tired, but no longer afraid. Months passed. The ranch healed, the way people do, slow but steady. Nora learned to ride, to mend fences, to laugh again. Nights grew quiet, filled only with crickets and wind through the grass. 9 months later, a baby's cry filled that same cabin where fear once lived. Cole stood by the doorway, hat in hand, watching Nora hold the child close. It wasn't his blood, but that didn't matter. He married her at the little church by the San Pedro River, giving both mother and child his name and his home. Folks in town whispered that Cole Barrett must be half saint, half fool, but he didn't care. Some men build fences, some men build families, and sometimes the bravest thing a man can do isn't to fight with his gun, but to stay, to love to give someone else a chance to start again, and that's how a broken girl found peace, beneath the same roof where fear once lived. So tell me this, what would you have done if she'd come to your door scared and broken? Would you have walked away or stood your ground? If this story stirred something in you, hit that like button so I know you're still out there. And if you believe every soul deserves a second chance, go ahead and subscribe. Pour yourself another cup of tea. Lean back and tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are? And where are you listening from?